who do not know me, my name is Christina Cole, and this is my 3rd year in hosting an Out of Darkness walk and my 2nd year for Bettendorf. I am always saddened by the need, but inspired by so many of you here today. I, like most of you, am grieving the loss of someone that died because of untreated mental illness and ultimately suicide. If you could take a look, If you could take a look at the person standing next to you and look at their honor beads, let it soak in what they mean to that person. Gold for the loss of a parent, orange for the loss of a sibling, purple for the loss of a relative or friend, silver for the loss of a first responder or military personnel, green for those who have struggled personally, teal for friends and family of someone who struggles, and blue because you support this cause. Take a moment to acknowledge what they represent, what that person next to you has been through, and for one moment, realize that you, yourself, are not alone in this. We are all here together for one cause, and that is to bring suicide prevention and awareness out of the darkness and into the light. In 2013, there were 41,149 suicides that were reported, making suicide the 10th leading cause of death for Americans. For college students and people ages 25 to 34, it is the 2nd leading cause of death. For people ages 10 years old to 24, it is the 3rd leading cause of death. To put those numbers into a broader range, from 1981 to 2010, there were 939,544 reported deaths by suicide, when only 479,479 people died from AIDS and HIV-related diseases. In light of all the teen suicides that we have been faced with in this community lately, it is our responsibility to come together. This must be discussed with your children. We need to start at the foundation. Be brave enough to have that conversation. Don't wait, don't hesitate, and don't look for the right time, because now is the right time. It is AFSP's goal to reduce the suicide rate by 25% before the year 2025, and we need everyone's help. I pray for this to happen every single night before I go to sleep. I wish I could say, standing up here, that it gets easier to talk about this, but it doesn't. This year was particularly hard for me because 7 days from today, I will be marrying a man that I absolutely adore. With the pending marriage, it has brought up so much unresolved grief that I had to work through. As we are all aware, grief from a suicide loss is like none other. I was with Rich for almost 12 years, a very tumultuous relationship to say the least. There were multiple suicide attempts in those 12 years, along with numerous police and fire department visits. I was always there to stop him. I was always there to drive behind him doing 90 miles an hour down our main road while on the phone with 911. I will never forget one of the last times he took off. I was behind him in the driveway and I wouldn't let him leave because I knew what that would mean. That meant a night of endless text messages and me trying to figure out where he was and to make sure he was safe. The final 2 weeks of his life, he became a person I did not recognize. Now, I can tell you that I seen the signs, but I didn't see them then. And I thought I was doing what I could to help. But in reality, I was watching him die inside and out in slow motion. It breaks my heart to think what mental illness and suicide has done to me, to you, and to this community. 2 years after his death, I moved to Iowa, and I desperately was seeking out some kind of programs to help with my grief and soon realized that there wasn't a lot available. I needed to change that, not only for me, but for every one of you here today. I didn't want Rich's death to be in vain. His life had a purpose, and I need you to know that. I had to try to make a difference to help sort out my own grief, and hopefully in that process, I am able to help others. I attended my first walk in Illinois shortly after Rich died in 2010. It was very powerful to me, to say the least. It made me feel like I wasn't alone and that other people understood my loss. This is why I pushed so hard to bring this event to Iowa. What I learned while bringing this event to Iowa is that currently, Iowa is one of 4 states that does not have a viable working chapter for AFSP. It was my goal from the very beginning to make that happen for this state. And it brings me great pleasure, and I am so proud to announce here today that we are in the process of forming a statewide chapter for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in the state of Iowa. We expect to be chartered by Thanksgiving, so that means this time next year we will have a chapter. We will be better able to serve the people of Iowa. AFSP will be looking at gaps in service throughout the state and work together to help fill those gaps with AFSP programs. As a chapter, we will join AFSP's growing network of chapters, nearly 80 of them right now, and the people of Iowa will have a voice on a national stage when it comes to suicide prevention. We will continue to lobby on Capitol Hill for better access to care and government funding for suicide prevention. This is just a small glimpse of what we will work to accomplish for you. This year was made possible because of you, and I want to thank every one of you for being here today. I really do. I really want to thank you all. This is amazing. I have a couple speakers, but I wanted to touch on a couple things beforehand. Typically, Pastor Mike Robinson will go at the end and lead us in with a prayer, but he's actually going to start. But I need to thank our major sponsors, Harrington's Pub, Van's Pizza, Halligan McCabe DeVries Funeral Home, Live Well Chiropractic. Those people are awesome, and if we can give them a round of applause for helping me bring this here today, that would be awesome. In-kind donations, I would like to thank WLLR for the PSAs, Susie Sunholm at Hy-Vee, West Central Illinois Out of Darkness Walk, Chaz and Tina over there, they really are my mentors, and Happy Joe's Pizza. I can't forget Rick's House of Hope for grieving and traumatized children. They do have a table over here. They are awesome people. You stop by. I think they have some brochures. I also need to thank NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They're over there as well with the table. Some dates to mark in your calendar. Monday, November 9th, we're having a fundraiser at the Bettendorf Pizza Ranch. So all tips and 10% of the proceeds will go directly back to this walk. So I want to pack the house in there. So if you could help promote that and show up and have your children out for a quick bite to eat and some pizza. You can find me on Facebook by searching for AFSP Bettendorf Iowa Walk. I give updates there as well. You can still donate to this walk until December 31st of this year. The Quad City Survivor Support Group meets the first Monday of the month at the NAMI building from 6 to 7:30. International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day will be held Saturday, November 21st, 2 p.m. at Runge Funeral Home. They will be featuring AFSP's documentary, Family Journeys, Healing and Hope After Suicide. There are some flyers up there that have that information on it. So at this point, I would like to introduce Pastor Mike Robinson.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. I want you to look around and look at all the colors and look at all the groups of people who are here today in memory of someone lost to completed suicide. And then look above you at the beauty of the skies. We have a good and a gracious and a loving God. That may be hard for some of you to hear in your pain right now, but believe me, that's a true statement. I am a grief counselor, and we're here to help you. I currently work at the Clarissa C. Cook Hospice House. My cards are there in on the table along those with Rick's House of Hope. If at any point in time you need some help, don't be afraid to call. We're here to help you, to let you know that each day, in every way, even in the darkest of days, if you give it time, life does get better. Thank you for being here. You are your own best friend. Help those who show signs of needing help. You are a wonderful group of people. Your support for each other is the best support you can have by being here today. Let's pray together. God of grace and God of love, the reason we're here is because we're looking for answers. You have the answers, O God, the God of our understanding. Help us to come to that understanding, O Lord, so that we might come to some understanding of not why, but to the point where we can come to believe that you're still in control, that you still have a place of peace in our lives. We are thankful for the lives of those that we had, and we believe, O Lord, that you can bring life for each of us and bring completeness to our lives again. Thank you for this assembly this morning, and thank you for the beauty of this day. For all of those who worked so hard to make this happen, and for all of this for what this day is about, we give you grace and thanks. In the name of the God that we call by many names, even the one that I call, Jesus Christ, in whose name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. This next lady I'd like to introduce to you, she became one of my first friends in Iowa. Oh, real quick before I do that, I want to tell you guys, we'll be back here again next year, second week of October. She became one of my first friends in Iowa. She is a spectacular woman. She runs the Suicide Survivor Support Group that I mentioned earlier. I would like you all to welcome Ludell Myers.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Christine, for giving me the opportunity to speak to all of you today. Even though I would have liked to have had a little more than 5 days' notice, a good friend reminded me that she was doing me a favor by not giving me a lot of additional time to stew over it. All of us read the headlines and watch the news and are reminded daily that this world is a very dangerous place to live in. The recent school shootings bring our own traumatic experience of loss back into the present like it was yesterday. Unemployment rates climb currently at 5%. As a result, the number of Americans forced to go without health insurance has skyrocketed. According to reports, 9 million Americans who lost their jobs in 08, 09, and the first half of 2010 either couldn't afford or couldn't get replacement coverage, pushing the number of uninsured Americans past 50 million. We are told the cost of war and the loss of lives of brave Americans since the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Approximately 5,000 brave Americans have died in Iraq and Afghanistan, and of those total deaths, almost 3,700 were due to hostile fire, and the remainder were due to non-hostile actions such as suicide. And that more U.S. soldiers killed themselves than died in combat in 2010. And recent statistics show that 22 veterans take their lives daily. 22 veterans take their lives daily. There were 40,000 suicides last year, and as Christine has already reminded us, suicide is the second leading cause of death for our young people, 15 to 24. 25% of American adults suffer from a diagnosable mental illness, myself included. Suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States, and 90% of all people who complete suicide have a diagnosable psychiatric disorder at the time of their death. So if you're like me and you hear those statistics and when they're coming at us on a daily basis, sometimes we get complacent. Or as President Obama recently termed it, we get numb. and our eyes glaze over, and we tend to want to find things to take our minds off of such gloomy aspects of living in our world today. For me, on July 1st, 2010, I was suddenly forced to come to terms with those statistics in a way that I could no longer avoid. I had kissed my husband Gregory goodbye that morning at 7:30 a.m. I remember for some reason I looked at the clock. I also recall that he made a special point of it to kiss me goodbye that morning. And so I went about my day as I usually would. But about 2:30 that afternoon, when the doorbell rang and I went to answer it, my whole world was about to crumble around me. There was a police detective and a medical examiner standing at my front door, and they looked as if they would rather be anywhere else but there. For a brief instant, I recall thinking, there must be some mistake. Why are they at my door? Maybe they have the wrong address. After letting them in, they proceeded to tell me that they were very sorry to have to tell me this, but they had found my husband's body at the park down the street from our house. This park was less than 5 minutes away from home. I was told that my husband had not gone to work that morning, but instead had gone to the most isolated part of the park and ended his life. He was 55 years old. He had lost his job the day before, and he didn't have a way to tell me. I remember my legs literally going out from under me as my mind reeled, trying to prevent me from the shock of something so horrific. The shock of that moment is still almost too unbearable to remember. And the next hours, days, weeks, months were a blur of denial, intense sadness, shock, despair, and finally anger. How could my husband bring murder into our family? Why didn't he at least give me the opportunity to help him? How could he leave me? Why wasn't my love enough to keep him here? At times it felt a lot more like a divorce than a death. I immersed myself into doing all the things that one has to do when they lose their spouse. I experienced those statistics I just talked about earlier in a very personal way during this time. I came to realize how many others were suffering with loss of job and insurance when I went to get my sleeping pills that next week at the pharmacy and was told my insurance had been rejected. The looks on the pharmacy's employees' faces of pity for me that too many others are seeing. The doorbell ringing at the soldiers' homes, giving the news no one wants to give another family. Everything became very personal, and I felt extreme empathy for others going through similar circumstances. And during this time, I instinctually reached out to family and friends and the church for support and literally for my own survival. As many of you fellow survivors have possibly found out, not everyone will react the way you need them to or think they will, because they are going through their own grief and have their own misconceptions like I did about suicide. Some of the people that I thought would be the best form of support were not. And this is not to say that they didn't want to help me. They just didn't know how. Most members of my family and friends support group had never had to deal with such a traumatic event. As time went on and I could open up to them more, they realized the focus was no longer on how my husband could do this to their niece, to their friend, to their aunt, to their sister, but it became focused on me and getting me through this time. A lot of them, many of who are here today, are the people I can go to for anything. You know the ones. They listen without judgment. They're not afraid to talk about my husband by his name, Gregory Meyer, or as I called him, Greggy. They realized that allowing me to talk about my grief would be the only way I would be able to move through to a place of healing. They seem to know what you need before you do, and they're willing to go through the darkest period of your life by your side. My Uncle Harlan Bland, who was a Korean and World War II veteran, had only to look into my eyes to realize that I was suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. He took me to talk to the local minister, who referred me to a counselor who specialized in PTSD and had helped victims' families of 9/11. When he suggested that I go to a counselor, I shrugged, and I said, I don't know if I really need a professional's help. I will never forget how he responded that day. He said, I don't think you should be closing doors before you open them right now. I will always be thankful to that minister, Reverend Gaylor Nelson, for starting me on a long path to healing. I thought about what he said, and I realized I may have been closing doors a lot in my life up to that point, but probably I couldn't afford to any longer. I reached out for that counselor's help and 2 other counselors and alternative healers who each in their own way were able to help me. I had local ministers calling me daily to pray with me. My neighbor ensured I got out daily to walk and kayak in the forest nearby, which got me out into nature. And I soon realized that exercise would be a major element in my healing. My niece telling me very simply to remember to breathe deeply and slowly. A simple thing, really, but a really important thing. When I moved out of the house that would be the last house that I would share with my husband, a friend stayed on the phone with me while I cried my eyes out as I watched the movers drive away with our things. I will never be able to properly thank them for what they've done for me. And the neat part is, I know they don't need me to. Shortly after my husband's memorial service in August 2010, I started to realize that I needed to research support groups in my area for suicide survivors. Because of the uniqueness and complicated grief of suicide, I knew I needed to find others that had been through this, because I knew they'd understand better than any others would. At that time, there wasn't a support group in the Quad Cities, so I traveled to Cedar Rapids and Iowa City to their survivor groups. I learned very quickly that I was indeed normal, that others had experienced this trauma and had gone on to have hope in their lives again, but that it would be a long process, and talking about it would be a continuous step in that process. In 2011, a suicide survivor support group was started in the Quad Cities, and since 2013, Sherry Jenkins and I have been blessed to facilitate this group of courageous, healing survivors who are on their own path through grief. Our meetings, as Christina told you, are held the first Monday of the month at the NAMI office on Locust and Brady. We are there for any of you who need a safe place to land. Now, one would wonder, why go to a meeting that can cause you to relive so much pain? And first, I think it's because pain isn't necessarily a bad thing. Pain is a reminder that something has happened that needs our attention. The revisited memories are reminders that our grief process is not yet complete. And for many of us, we come to the realization that while it may change with time, our grief will never really end. And we come to a point where we can accept that. Secondly, and just as important, we recall the first time we walked into that room of survivors. We remember the incredible relief we felt when we realized that we were not alone, that others have been where we are, and that they understood our new world. Today, there are many of you here to show the survivor community support by saying, we may not completely understand what you are experiencing, but we want you to know that we care about your loss and your pain. And as we watch you admire the pictures and tokens of our loved ones on the memorial wall, we hear you say, we want to proudly celebrate your loved one's life instead of only hearing the hush talk about how they died. Because you care enough to invest your time and your money in this walk, you tell us we want to give you reason for hope and for encouragement instead of telling us to just get over it. Because you make it a point to literally walk alongside of us today in our journey. You say, we want you to know that you're not alone in your pain, instead of looking down and avoiding our gaze as we pass each other. Certainly, we will forever be scarred by our loss. We can't change the events of the past. But I do believe we can choose to make this world a better place in spite of, or perhaps even because of, our combined painful experience. We can become more compassionate. We can shift our values. We can have even more appreciation of the small wonders of life. And we can decide to make a difference in a world often filled with inexplicable pain. And finally, we can choose to feel hope. So for all your spoken and unspoken words today and the importance they have for survivors who are struggling to make those choices, I thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of all my fellow survivors of suicide. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Lou. I do believe it's important that we here today or hear from our youth and understand the trials and tribulations that they have today. It's not necessarily what you and I had as a child growing up with Facebook and social media. It's a completely different environment. So the next speaker is an amazing young man that he's going to go far in life. He's one of our top fundraisers. He's the captain of Why Walk When You Can Dance. Please welcome Josh Volkers.
As Christina said, my name is Josh Volkers, and I'm a senior at Davenport North High School. I struggle with the normal things a 17-year-old goes through: passing classes, making and maintaining friendships, and finding myself. But the hardest thing I've ever had to go through is losing my best friend to suicide. In 2001, my family and I moved into a developing neighborhood, and shortly after, I met one of my lifelong friends, Kelsey. I attended JFK, a private K-8, starting in preschool, and I made some of the best friends I have. Because we were in classes of about 30, we were all very close-knit, and we knew each other very well. We learned and matured together, and we loved each other deeply. Kelsey and I hung out after school and on the weekends. In the warmer months when we were younger, we played games outside. But as we got older, our time was spent sitting on the front porch, laughing and talking about our days. I made the decision that I would attend North High School my 7th grade year, and because most of my friends were going to Assumption, that meant drifting away from a lot of them. It was challenging to say the least, being at a new school that is far bigger than what you're used to and full of new people, so I kept to myself at school. It was nice to come home after a long day and hang out with Kelsey. We would talk about what was going on with my old classmates and how our classes were going. I would tell her how great public school was, and she would tell me all about her new friendships. Freshman year was rough for both of us, but we stayed close and had fun. Over the summer, we took driver's ed together at North, and we hung out quite often. And because it was summer, I was allowed to stay out after dark, giving us more time together. Before we knew it, sophomore year was off to a start. By this time, I had made plenty of friends at North, but didn't have a date to homecoming. We decided we were going together as friends, and so the planning started. Kelsey found a beautiful purple dress, and she insisted I wear a purple bow tie and suspenders, so I did. Homecoming was on October 12th that year, and it was a great day for outdoor fall pictures. And having the friendship we didn't stop laughing the whole time. Kelsey and I were as close as we had ever been. We had dinner, and then we went to the dance. It was so much fun. On October 15th, my phone was being repaired, so we weren't able to text at all that day. I wasn't able to get the check-ins like usual, but we had our busy days, and this was mine. My family and I walked down to the neighbors to help them finish moving in. I had to run home and grab something, so I took Mom's phone with me just in case, because mine was still being repaired. On my way home, Kelsey's mom texted my mom's phone and asked if Kelsey and I were together. I was strong, and just take it day by day. The funeral was Saturday, and the emotions came right back. Flashback to the night she passed away, and all the pain like it was happening all over again. It was comforting to be with all of her friends and family, and everyone knew how close we were, so I was getting plenty of support as well. That was the last time I saw my best friend. That year it felt like there were so many suicides, but I think it was just each one I heard about seemed to hit me just as hard as Kelsey's. I struggled with my own emotions for the longest time because I bottled everything up and tried to be the stable wall everyone else could lean and rely on. I started seeing a counselor just so I had that output, someone I could get it all off my chest to, and someone who knew just the right thing to say to make me feel better. Last year I started the AFSP team Walk When You Can Dance, named after one of Kelsey's favorite quotes, and I raised $1,396 because of all the support from family and friends. Today, just less than 2 years ago, I still miss her, and I miss the stupid things we did together, and I miss the laughter we shared. But I know that today I have a guardian angel, and she's always looking out for me. It's been a long journey, and in one sense it feels like I just lost her yesterday, and in another it feels like it was a lifetime ago. Through faith, family, and friends, I've gotten through it, and that's my story. That's why I walk, to remember Kelsey.
Thanks, Josh. The next lady, the last speaker, is Christine Schmidt. She's an incredibly dynamic woman. She has formed the coalition It's All Love, Only Love, and its mission is to educate parents and children about anxiety and depression in order to help prevent suicide. So if you can give her just a quick second, she will also lead us into the walk.
Hello, and thank you very much. We're all here today because suicide has touched each of us in a very personal way. You may be here because you've lost a child, a husband, a wife, mother, father, or friend, or a sister or brother. Or perhaps you yourself are a survivor, and you want to help make a difference for others. I'm here because not only have I lost a friend and a cousin to suicide, but most recently, we've lost our daughter. Morgan Schmidt was 12 years old when she ended her life on April 6th, 2014. And it was a day just as beautiful as today, very crisp and sunny, a very beautiful spring day. But the sun wasn't shining for Morgan. She was battling a darkness, but none of us knew just how dark it really was for her. Morgan was a lovely child. Morgan was very well loved by her friends and her family. She was very funny, outgoing, terrific grades in school, really seemingly on the outside had it all together. I'm often asked as a parent, how do you survive this? And how do you go on day by day? And how do you make it through? And my answer, I wouldn't have thought this a year and a half ago. It's been 18 months now when someone said time heals. And it does little by little, I will say. It heals a little, but that wound is always fresh. But I would tell you that as a parent, minute by minute sometimes. And literally there have been times, especially in the very beginning, where all I could think and say was the word Jesus. Because that's the only thing I could focus my mind, my attention, and my heart on, was Jesus getting me through this time. Lots of praying, sleeping sometimes when I felt like I needed to just escape. Lots and lots of crying. I still cry. And most importantly, reaching out to my family and my friends. I've also been able to find some support groups in our area, and they've been incredibly helpful. Recently, I became very aware of just how sad and low I was, and I realized that I was merely surviving this life. This life can get very hard and very long, terribly long, when you realize all you're doing is surviving. and I got tired of just surviving. I really wanted to start living again. There's a quote that I came upon a couple of months ago, and it really stuck to me, and I've turned it into kind of a personal mantra, and I've shared it with a lot of different people. It says, "The recipe to life is not in surviving, but in finding something to live for." And I took those words to heart. Exactly what am I living for? Well, I know that I'm living for my kids, my husband, and my family, and for Morgan. She didn't want to take me with her, just as none of your loved ones or friends wanted to take you with them. She wants me to live and enjoy life. I know that. I'm trying to find joy in every single day. Morgan even wrote something a while ago that affirms that thought. She wrote that one of the things that she admired most about me was my positive attitude and my ability to find the silver lining in every situation. That silver lining is not easy to find when you've lost someone to suicide. I found a new purpose recently, and that was when we decided that we needed to have Morgan's death mean something. We have to help families fight. We have to help them fight depression and save their loved ones. So in February, I started the It's All Love, Only Love Coalition. And the name actually came to me in a dream from Morgan herself. And the only things I remember about that dream was that she was standing in front of me, looking at me, and she just said, "Mom, it's all love, only love." And she said it 3 times, and then I woke up. And since then, it's just stuck with me, and I knew that really that's what this life is about. It's about the love, and it's about the love we show each other, and really about the love that we show ourselves too. And so the coalition is educating children and parents about anxiety and depression to help try and prevent suicide. And one aspect of that educating is participating in good self-care. I can teach about all the warning signs and the triggers of depression and suicide, but we know how skilled people are and how skilled they can be at hiding their thoughts and intentions from us. So I want children and teens and adults to see the signs, the warning signs within themselves before it goes too far, before it gets too dark, and the only light they see is to end their own life. These walks are so important, and so is the discussion. Carry this awareness with you beyond today. Keep talking and share your personal story with others. I really believe that we can win this battle. So for every reason that you're here today, I thank you. We can't do it alone, but we are mighty in numbers. So let's walk now for our friends and for all those who we've lost, and for in their name and in their honor. And let's walk for awareness to change this world, to make it a softer place. Thank you. We're going to start walking right around the corner here by the bathrooms. The path just starts right over here. So we can go ahead.
Thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate it.